Hey folks, how you doing? Nice, beautiful early morning here in Cowra. I'm just on my way to Forbes. It's really crisp here this morning, last day of September. I thought it'd be a bit warmer, but it's a nice crisp morning, it's good. Just on my way for another plant ID workshop on a farm up the road, and I really want to cram the videos in, so I'm still going. I've finally gotten around to this one, and it's taken me so long. Should have got around to it a lot earlier. I know I'm not in the bush, but these guys are just so numerous and common on the edges of farms, in farms, along roadways, rest areas like this. A lot of them have been cut down over the last 200 years, that's for sure. But this is a beautiful yellow box, Eucalyptus melliodora. It's a real prominent eucalypt in Australia. It's one of the favoured trees for beekeepers if they can get their bees foraging on yellow box. And you've probably heard of marketed items like yellow box honey, which relates to this guy here. Melliodora, it does mean honey bearing or honey smelling. That's sort of what it means from Greek there. Honey in Greek is melli. It is a box. They're very common once you get on the tablelands of New South Wales. I'd argue they're probably the most common tree, or easily in the top 3 most common trees, I would think, on the tablelands of New South Wales. Probably talking, you know, melliodora, Blakely Eye, and maybe Albans. I think probably get probably easily all those 3 would be in the top 5 for the most common trees you get. It's got a big range, melliodora. It's very, very prolific on the tablelands and western slopes, just getting into the western plains of New South Wales, sort of pretty much the entirety of the state from north to south. They're hard to find in Sydney, but I've found some planted ones around the place. In some parks in Liverpool, Bankstown, I found some planted ones. The closest I get them to Sydney, you can go up the Wombeyan Caves Road and you'll get them up there towards Wombeyan Caves. If you go to Canyon Lee up the Tuggalong Road, you'll start getting them there as well, though they can be a bit hard to discern because they'll just be small trees. And once you go down the Hume Highway to about Maroolin, you'll start getting them there as well, around that area. Goulburn, you get them for sure. And once you get here on the tablelands, Bathurst, Cowra, you just see a lot of them. And you can see some really big grandiose ones. They're a tree to 30 metres tall. The furthest west they go is about a bit further west than Dubbo, maybe Griffith. And I collected some. They were west of Dubbo, I think is it that area called Narromine, where I got them growing on some red sand. And they got a bit tricky there. The leaves were getting a lot longer than what I was accustomed to growing on red sand as sort of these skinny trees, but I was getting close to the western edge of the range there. They're all through Victoria pretty much, and they get really far west in Victoria, west of Horsham, but they don't quite make it into South Australia. They're not quite into South Australia. They just fall short there in the west of Victoria. They go up into Queensland, but they're not as extensive in Queensland. They get up to about Gladstone, and in Queensland they sort of go a little bit more coastal, but they get up towards Gladstone, they're around Toowoomba, and then they go out towards Ralston, and I think there's a disjunct patch south of Springshaw as far as I can see. That's pretty far inland, about 600 k's I think. I've been to Springshaw once. There's a disjunct patch to the south of Springshaw. I don't know if that's, excuse my ignorance, I don't know if that's Carnarvon National Park or something like that, but that's about where they get to. And then they don't seem to be any further afield than that. So, but that's a pretty big range. So they're one of the big spreading eucalypts, especially in New South Wales. So melliodora, it is a box, but normally it has a bit more of a fibrous, messy chunk at the bottom. The bark can vary a fair bit, It doesn't have that Albans Mollicana look to it. It's got more of a mess down the bottom. It can have a bit of a variety of fibrous bark and smooth patches. This is a big old one. And when they get like this, they just have a lot of messy bark at the bottom. And then as you go up, you start to get smooth patches. But one of the killer features for it to ID is you get a lot of what I'll call sinuation. You get a lot of, and I showed it in my polyanthemos video where it was a bit unexpected, you get a lot of curvy bark sort of snaking up the trunk, and it can make these really beautiful S patterns. And I'm trying to give you some examples here. You just go up the trunk and you get some really beautiful sinuations, just sinuous curving back and forth like a snake sort of thing. Just does these really beautiful contortions, flowing like a river. Just really nice. That's what I always look for melliodora. It's one of the things that gives me a lot of comfort that I'm right. In my polyanthemos video, I said you got to check it's not polyanthemos. Melliodora tends to be on the more fertile country. It's on the best farming land. It does go up into the rocky hills as well sometimes, but this is where it likes to hang out, on a beautiful, you know, farmland, valley flat, we might call it. You'll have no trouble finding melliodora a lot of the time. Just give a few more examples up here. It's worth looking at. Just these beautiful sinuations a lot of the time, and you don't get too many other ukes throwing these sort of patterns. It's a very good question why the bark does it. Why does it tend to go back and forth like a river? There's a really good bit there as it goes up the trunk. Not too sure, but just beautiful how it does it. Just let me show you one more example on this one over here. So as you can see, it's not too hard to find really nice big examples. Eucalyptus conico is here as well. I didn't expect to see that here, but Eucalyptus conico is just over there. Made a video on that on my last trip. Here's another one here. You can just pick them from, again, we got this sort of really chunky fibrous bark at the bottom. You can just pull it off in random sized sort of chunks. And then you just got to look for the nice cream patterns coming in. Up they go. And even where the chunks are bare, you've sort of got these remnant sinuous patches. So it sort of reminds me of a watercourse. It's like the bark is trying to imitate a river or a creek. So I'm not an artist, but that's what an artist might see in it. And then you just got these smooth limbs. So just like something like Albans or Mollicana, you got these smooth limbs up the top, but they've also got these beautiful sinuous patterns on them. So the first thing about melliodora, I'll say, is the leaves have got a good dash of blue in them. So you can just see here, they've got a nice dash of blue, and that's pretty common. It can vary, but rarely do you see them and you'd say, oh, they're totally green. It's a very blue leaf, and they're concolorous. Being a box, they're concolorous leaves. There's no hint of discoloration in them. So the boxes are known for having concolorous leaves. Seeing is believing. Just give you a good example there. I've never seen melliodora with any sort of discoloration. And that goes for most of the trees out here. You're not getting too many that throw really strong discolorous leaves. The leaves, overall, they're reported as 14 centimetres long, 3 centimetres wide. So I sort of say melliodora, it's not a tree that gets overly long leaves. They tend to be on the short side. Now, I think this is an extreme example here of how short they can get. It was just a branch from up there, maybe a more juvenile branch. And I don't want to give you a bum steer and not do it justice, but these leaves here, and you can see they've got buds already, these leaves here would be about 6 centimetres long, I would say, maximum. And that is sort of, you know, giving you a bit of an impression that they're very short, but It's what I observe a lot of the time for trees around this part of the world. You just get this really nice short canopy, and that's another lead for melliodora. You're just getting these leaves that in this part of the world, I'll argue, Bathurst, Cowra, maybe Lithgow as well, they're just not very long. The leaves aren't overly long. They're normally something like up to 10 centimetres. They're more sort of, you know, they're almost getting a sort of long oval shape sort of thing, and they're not a long lanceolate thing like something like Bridgesiana or Goniocalyx or something like that. But do note, they can get up to 14 centimetres long. Those trees that the leaves I collected from trees around Narromine, the leaves were getting very long. They were getting long and narrow, and I was starting to wonder whether it actually was melliodora. And it was growing on red sand as well, which is throwing me a bit too. But they did turn out to be melliodora. Try and get some, you know, better representation here. Here's just a nice leaf here. Bluey green. And what I like about melliodora is this really, I think, pronounced intramarginal vein. See that intramarginal vein? That would be, I don't know, about 1 millimetre or 2 in from the margin. That's what I look for as well with melliodora. Just that nice vein that runs along the margin all the way around. Call it intramarginal. Now, I'm not saying other Ukes don't have that as well, but I just find it very prominent on melliodora. Just that nice prominent intramarginal vein. I always look for it. It doesn't matter what side of the leaf you look at. You'll see it nicely there. So 14 centimetres long. I think, you know, that was probably one of the longest leaves I can see on this branch here. I'm just trying to get a bit more representation. That's what I like, a leaf like that. I know I don't have a ruler, but I reckon this would be about 7 centimetres, maybe 2 centimetres wide. That's what I typically get for trees around here, especially old trees. The saplings don't look much different. They don't look very different in melliodora. I'm just looking around here for saplings but can't really see any, but they're not very much different for melliodora. So just check that intramarginal vein. That's what I look for all the time. It's always pretty consistent. And I just think the foliage has an overall appearance on it. Remember Conica over there, I just said it's got leaves like melliodora, but it's got a trunk like Bridgesiana, and that's what I'm seeing here again. But the melliodoras have a different trunk and the upper bare branches, which Conica sort of doesn't have. But I think the foliage of the two are very similar. So that's what you get for melliodora commonly. Just that really, you know, I call them short, stumpy leaves. But just note they can get up to 14 centimetres and they've got a big range. It might depend where you go. Now, the last workshop I ran, I hadn't noticed this before, but a really cool thing that separates melliodora from polyanthemos, and I wasn't really aware of this. In some of these eucalypts, well, in the eucalypts generally, you can have what we call simple inflorescences, where you've just got the buds clustering in the leaf axils. And you can have what we call terminal compound inflorescences, where it sort of puts on a branching structure of multiple umbellasters. Sort of a branching structure where they will extend beyond the tip of the branch, and you'll have a little sort of panicle-like group of umbellasters. Or some people might call it a sort of a raceme-like, but it's sort of like a little treed branch-like structure of umbellasters as it comes beyond the branch. Maybe we could argue it's just starting to do it here, like it's putting out sort of multiple umbellasters on a branching structure. I learnt that polyanthemos is known for doing the branching terminal compound inflorescences, but in melliodora, they're meant to be simple. They're always meant to be simple inflorescences. You know, probably we might say to a 99% confidence. So all it means is, as you come up the stems, you should just have these single umbellasters. You shouldn't really have a branching umbellaster structure. It's just doing it there at the tips where it wants to put on 2, but you're not getting like a branch structure of say 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 umbellasters coming out the top. I've showed this on my melliodora video. I might have showed it with the fruit instead of the buds, but I showed it on melliodora. And I might have showed it on polyanthemos as well, but I wasn't really onto it until my last workshop. So melliodora, they're meant to be simple umbellasters in the leaf axils. That's one tip if you're confusing it with polyanthemos. And just like my Eucalyptus obstans video, I'm trying to find an umbellaster which has 7 and I can't. They're meant to be in 7s. And everywhere I look, I'm not really getting 7. I'm getting 3, 4, 5, 6, but they're meant to be in 7s, melliodora. Obviously, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to find you a 7 and show it to you. If I look over this branch over and over again, I can't find a 7, but here it is. Just really hard, but they're in 7s, melliodora. So one of the beautiful 7 ones. They're not 7 to 15 like some of the other boxes. They're meant to be in 7s. So that's a good tip for melliodora as well. So simple umbellasters in the leaf axils. That's a tip for melliodora. They're not meant to have the terminal compound groups, which polyanthemos throws, albans throws as well. So it's just a good tip for that one. So nice buds, they can put on a lot of flowers. Melliodora can have a really good flowering season once it gets going. Some people talk about the red stems of melliodora. They'll say the stems are always very red. We get a lot of eucalypts showing red stems like snow gum, scribbly gum, but you probably wouldn't confuse those with this guy. Seabori as well, which doesn't grow out here, of course. So some people say they like the red stems on melliodora. That helps them as well with an identification. Now, I've just got to find some fruit in. All right, just having a hard time with fruits. I've just found fruits for melliodora hard to find in the last year or so. Just haven't got a lot of, I remember the last workshop, I just couldn't find fruit readily. I eventually found some roadside trees around Mudgee and I got a little bit, but I'm just finding the fruits hard to come by at the moment. But I do have some here. I think they're reported as about 8 mil wide by 8 mil long, something like that, not a lot bigger than that. Now, what I just say about melliodora in regards to just some of the other boxes, just zooming on these ones here, perhaps maybe just have a look at that one and then just these ones here, if I get my finger there. I say with albans and melliodora, the fruit is a champagne flute. That's what I'm trying to say. The fruit is a nice champagne flute. In melliodora, I just treat it as more of a wine glass. It's a more sort of broader wine glass, maybe like a, I don't know which sort of glass I'm referring to, but it's not sort of a tall champagne flute. It's more of a shorter, rounder wine glass. That's what I say about melliodora. Just doesn't have that taller, elongated appearance. I'll just look at these ones here. These are a bit on the small side, I think, but these ones I've got are about, they'd be struggling to get to 5 mil in size, in width. Just note they go up to 8 mil, but that's pretty good for melliodora. It's just more of a broader, shorter fruit than those melliodora albans fruits. So just a bit shorter and wider. They've got 4 to 5 valves and they can be to rim level or enclosed. Just remember the boxes are known for having enclosed valves. They're not really exerted. The valves will normally be enclosed within the fruit. They don't stick out in any way or form. It's got a bit of a thickened disc there on the top. So you can get this nice sort of thickened disc in melliodora, just up the top there. Yeah, it's got a bit of thickness to it, the disc. Reminded me a little bit of something like Seabury. But that's a really good fruit there for melliodora. I'm just really sorry I'm not finding much of it, but you can see it's got a beautiful pattern on it too. So enclosed valves a lot of the time for the boxes. Yeah, about 8 mil long and wide. I have seen them bigger than this one I've got here. And they can be on a peduncle, I think about up to 1 centimetre long, or maybe 9 mil, something like that. So they can have a nice long peduncle melliodora. Just finding fruit hard to come by. And I just think these are on the small side for what you usually see. But the shape is right. The shape is good. Those two there are good as well. I'd just like to get some really, a lot more examples and larger numbers in the cluster. But this is all I'm getting at the moment. There's plenty of bud. There's a load of bud. It's the last day of September. Might be the bud time for it. There's plenty of buds here, but just not a lot of fruit. Just go back to those leaves again. That's what I really like for a melliodora leaf. That's in this part of the world. That's just so typical. And just going to show that one. That's pretty typical too. That's getting longer and narrower, but that's sort of typical as well. That's where I'm really comfortable with a melliodora leaf. Just note how it sits in the palm of my hand like that. And it's not very long like Bridgesiana. It's not very fat like Albans. It's not getting the width of Albans. It's just a really discernible leaf, I think. And this is the second branch for the fruit. But plenty of red stem as well. Just all that beautiful red stem. So that's probably enough for melliodora. Sorry if I've taken too long with it, but it's well and truly a prominent New South Wales eucalypt and a prominent Australian eucalypt too. We might think something like river red gum is one of the most prominent, but I'd say melliodora, it's probably in the, at least in the top 10, most prominent eucalyptus trees, I think, for people knowing it, for farmers knowing it. Beekeepers definitely know it. It's just one of the beautiful ones, and you can get some really big, old, grandiose ones on the edges of farms. There's another nice one over here. You can just, if you get your eye in, you'll be able to pick them from the car at 100 kilometres an hour. There's a nice one here with a whole heap of vertical uprights. And the trunk just gives it away. The trunk and the canopy give it away pretty quickly. So hopefully that's a helpful one for you. Should have gotten around to it a long time ago.